Hey, good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. Today we'll be discussing hacker tools, techniques, and reducing your risk. My name is Steve Hardee. I'm a manager over a great cybersecurity team, a staff member at our local security conference, B-Sides Orlando, a technology board member at Full Sail University, as well as a technical reviewer in the information security space at Packet Publishing. Today's disclaimer is that I'm not representing my employer, past, present, or future, and that today's material is for educational purposes only. We're going to go ahead and jump right into some of the most common attacks. One of the most common and profitable attacks for malicious actors is ransomware. Ransomware is just a piece of malware that encrypts your files and removes your access to them. In order to get your access back to the files, you have to pay money or a ransom to get the files back. This is a really interesting method because there's actually a full business model for ransomware. It's extremely profitable. Not only do they have, contact information here on this example, but generally there's call centers to where they will help you get them paid. They really, really want to make sure that they get paid just as your normal business. This is their business in general is attacking and getting devices encrypted so that they can get paid. So another interesting item around ransomware is there's actually a business model for selling the ransomware software itself. So if you so wanted to, you could go buy ransomware and deploy this yourself, and they will help you. You don't have to have business skills or hacking skills rather to perform this. You can even buy pre-infected devices. So I could buy 1,000 pre-infected devices that have not yet executed the ransomware if I wanted to do so, and buy those devices up and just run the ransomware myself, and then I would be the collection of the bounty. So it's quite interesting that there's a market all around that, both from collecting and providing you. There's full support. They will give you support if it does not get in. So it's a really interesting time. So kind of jumping back to how ransomware generally happens, what most we see is a malicious document will generally come in most of the time through email. So somebody at your organization or personally at your home would receive an email with a malicious attachment, and upon opening that attachment, it's going to infect your computer. So knowing that as an attacker, I want to make as much money as possible, I don't only want to impact your device. If you're an organization, I want to spread and make as much money as possible. So the newer variants of ransomware will actually attempt to target and impact all of your devices in your network. This way I have the most payout, the most chance of you actually paying. Because if it's one device in an enterprise or a small business, okay, we can kind of re-image that and move on. If there's much more beyond that, then I have, again, a much higher opportunity as the attacker that you're going to want to pay out as the business. So here we've just got a few examples of some Word documents that are trying to trick the user into getting to execute them. So if we see at the top, the little yellow bar, it says security warning or protected view. The document itself is saying, hey, this document is encrypted or protected. You need to enable content to view this. Well, many of you may know or may not know, but Microsoft products, Office, Excel, have what's called a macro. So what a macro is in short is just some code that I can leverage for an Excel sheet. I can pull from a database or a financial server to help me pull in some information. So as the attacker, I can also leverage this macro to pull in some information, to contact my website, to pull in some code to execute in the back end. So that's what they're trying to do here, is trying to get you to enable the ability for that macro to run. Your organization may have these features enabled to warn you about. This is why, if you have Office 365 through Microsoft or anything like that, those are on generally by default. So if you ever see this and it's not a document that you're aware of or need to actually change or modify itself, don't enable this. So those are just some things to look out for specifically around these documents. So what can you do in relation to ransomware? So again, we showed in our demo that the devices are trying to infect many, many devices. So that's generally possible from accounts having administrative access, not only on your device, but if I had access, administrative access over my device, but also the 50 other devices at my small business, that's a problem because the ransomware is able to obtain that password and try to pass that to the other devices. So removing your user's administrative access is a good first step. If they say, hey, I really, really need this, then what you want to try to do is give them a secondary account. So I don't want to run my normal day-to-day operations, so checking email, browsing the web through an administrative account. So for instance, I would have my Steve account that browses the web, checks my email, and if I need administrative things to install software or make some changes to a server, I would want to use a different account. So a Steve-A or -P, so A for admin, P for privileged, what have you. So that's just one step that you could take. Another step that you could take is having different local admin passwords for each device. So even though I have my Steve account, I may have an administrator account that is the built-in Windows administrator account. So those passwords in a lot of organizations are the same across the board. Again, the malicious documents or attackers will target this. So one method that you can do to counter that is use a solution that would change the password of those administrator accounts. One solution is Microsoft LAPS, or Microsoft Local Admin Password Solution. And what this does is it changes the password of the local admin account to a unique password for every device. Generally, your IT admins, they're going to be using their own account credentials. They don't need that admin password to do normal things, right? So having that either disabled and or rotated is a good step. Using antivirus is obviously a great step. You know, if I write malicious code and attack a company, now their antivirus company may know that and they create a signature. So now company B can be aware of that, right? So that's what you want to run those for, is to identify the known items there. Having segmented backups. So if I have backups on my computer, either small business or large, and I plug in a hard drive to back up my files. If I leave that plugged in and my device gets ransomware or another malicious attack, they're going to go after any drive that's connected. So if your backup, if you do backups as a business or as a person, try to come up with a schedule for that. So every Friday, I'm going to plug this device in and run my backups, but then I'm going to unplug that and not leave it all the time. Another solution that you could have is like a cloud backup solution, so like a Google Drive or OneDrive or something like that. Keeping devices and software updated, not only your operating system, so Windows and Mac OS, but also the actual software that runs on it. So Adobe Reader, Java, iTunes, all of those have vulnerabilities in them, and that's what the attackers are going after, right? That's what's actually allowing this software to be compromised and executed. Questioning attachments. So if I receive an attachment from somebody that I don't know, why do I need to open that? If I do, you know, I really need to think about that. Or if you are at a larger organization that has a security team, please reach out to them. Say, hey, you know, I wasn't really expecting this. This attachment seems a little off to me. Can you review this for me? From our security side, we absolutely love to do that. We would much rather get ahead of that, review the document, say, hey, this is nothing, you're fine, or get ahead, and then we're not doing incident response from you opening that and infecting all the devices. Having a plan is obviously great. So like I said, do you have a security team? If you're a smaller business, if you don't have a security team, go ahead and think of that now. What if things were to hit the fan today from a ransomware attack? Who would you call? Go ahead and get that plan now. If all of your backups were to go, what are you going to do? And user awareness. So just educating your users, be that a large enterprise, your small business, your family members. Hey, don't click on these links. Don't open this. User awareness is one of the best things that you can do. Most of the attacks are needing a user to do something. So with that, social engineering, we're going to jump right in there. So social engineering is me trying to manipulate you into either giving me information or you doing something for me. So in that realm of clicking on that or opening that attachment, right? So we're going to go ahead and walk through a very basic scenario. What we're going to use is what's called the social engineering toolkit. This is from Dave Kennedy, a great security researcher, and his team. This is an absolutely free tool for anybody that wants to be malicious or a security individual for testing. I'm saying that because it's absolutely free. It's not costing these people to do anything. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to select down here, social engineering attack. And what it's going to ask us for is, what website would you like to clone? So what we're doing in this social engineering attack is we're going to clone a website. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to use an example. And with all my examples, always try to relate this to your business and how this would impact you. So in this example, we're going to just clone gmail.com. So on the left here, we see that it's accounts.google.com. This is the real Gmail login page. I've told it to clone this website. And on the right, we've got the website that I now am running as the attacker. So we see here 192.168.1.2. That's just my address of my device. So if I were to send this out to a user, they're not gonna really click on this because the domain's wrong, right? We've trained our users around that. Well, the page looks right, but it's not Gmail. So we've got to get around that. So let's buy a domain. Well, Google.com is not available, and neither is gmail.com for some weird reason. But what about GoogleServer1.com? GoogleServer1.com is available for me for $10. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to craft an email to try to trick a user. So being that I own GoogleServer1.com, I'm going to send this email from GoogleServer1.com. We'll go ahead and take a look. And since I own GoogleServer1.com, I can have an email from there. I now have, any email account from there. So I'm just going to kind of mimic what Google does. No reply at accounts.googleserver1.com instead of google.com, right? So here where it says Google in bold, that would generally be where my name is. So rather than Steve, I'm just going to put Google because that's how it looks for everybody else. So I'm going to shoot this off and just say, your Google account was signed in. We want to have you validate the activity. Again, I'm just creating a sense of urgency here to make the user question anything. So when they click this check activity, it's actually going to go to the website that we cloned. So we cloned and we now own GoogleServer1.com. And as we saw before, I've got that same login page. So as this user clicks this, they get to my page that I now run. It looks the exact same. They're going to input their email and their password. Now, this information is going to be sent to me. As an attacker, I have a few options. I can, put up a splash page that says, hey, this website's down for maintenance, please try later. Or what I would do in this specific scenario is just redirect them to the real gmail.com, and it's going to then prompt them for the real credentials. I can't pass them or anything like that for it. But now they're not questioning anything. If they were to have questioned anything, it's now at the real gmail.com. It's not going to be as suspicious. But if I say, hey, this website's down, they may start to look at the URL bar and start to question, right? Excuse me. That's just kind of one quick example of some of the attacks that we see. Keep that in mind again for your own self. For would somebody trick you into going into Google or Yahoo? Or if I could do this to your own business, think of that from that aspect. So we're going to look at a few phishing examples of what that just was. So on the left here, we've got a really lazy one, in my opinion. And somebody's shared a document with you through Dropbox. And what they're doing here is they're getting the user to tell them what account they're logging in with. So they've done a page for everything that we just walked through. So we just walked through Google. So the user, if they click here, would be presented with what we just created. But they didn't do any reconnaissance about the the user or the company, right? So they're just sending this out in mass saying, hey, you go ahead and choose and tell me what login I'm going to steal from you. So if they were to click on Outlook, it's just a spoofed page of Outlook as well, right? So that makes sense. On the right here, we've got kind of more of a targeted one. Everybody and their mother now has Amazon. And again, creating the sense of urgency. So Amazon has canceled due to your fraudulent activity. Please verify. This is just going to do the same thing and capture your credentials. Left here, same thing. Microsoft, we've got a Bank of America one. These are all just different examples that we have actually seen come through. Just wanted to be able to show you them. And keep in mind too that, you know, our phones are fully fledged computers now. So the malicious actors are also going down this route. So, hey, we've seen some unusual activity on your banking website. You know, bit.ly links and things like that are, you know, shorthand links, and it's not gonna present to the user right away. And we're kind of getting used to that, the shorthand links. So we're just gonna click on that without really thinking. Here we've got a .bo or b of a -sms.com, right? That's not Bank of America, but as the attacker, I'm going to say, hey, Bank of America dot blah 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 blah. That would be our Google server 1.com, right? So same methodology here. So just keep in mind that on your phone, text messages or even phone calls coming in, actors can very easily spoof a phone number. So I can look up Google or Bank of America's phone number and tell my phone to call you as that number. The caller ID that's going to show up on your phone is going to look real. You're going to answer it, and I'm typically going to say, hey, you know, this is Steve with Bank of America. We had some fraudulent activity. If you could just go ahead, before I talk to you, I need to validate you, and I need you to tell me your security code. If anybody's calling you out of the blue asking for you to give information to validate you, don't do that. Just hang up. If you receive a text message that says there's an account issue, don't reply to that. Go directly, don't click on the link there, right? So go to the website yourself, bankofamerica.com, that you have typed in your browser. If you receive a phone call, hang up, Google the real number and call that number back. It's not going to be that spoofed number, right? That person can't intercept those numbers that way. So just some things to think about there. So what can we do? You know the common types that of attacks here. So sense of urgency, we discussed that a few times. Misleading links, we reviewed that for Google server 1.com and a few items there. Spelling mistakes are always a recommendation. A lot of the attackers are getting a lot better here because they're just cloning the exact emails. For instance, I'll receive a real email from Bank of America, and I'm just going to copy and paste that because I know that's what they're sending out. Attachments, if you're not expecting an attachment, don't open it. Links within a PDF, we're seeing these as well. So I'm not going to send you a malicious PDF, but I'm going to send you a PDF that has a link within inside of it. So what this does is this generally will bypass your security filters as an organization. So there's nothing malicious in the PDF, it's going to come through, and the URL within the PDF may be malicious, but your email client and security software may or may not read within a PDF. So that's some of the attacks that we're seeing too, is, hey, click here to download the document. That's weird. Don't fall for those. So again, don't click, go to the known site. If it says Bank of America, hey, this is from Bank of America, just go to bankofamerica.com yourself and call the real number back, right? It's easy to spoof those numbers, so don't be tricked by that, just call them back. So now we're gonna talk about spear phishing. What we just discussed was phishing, and that's kind of throwing a wide net. Spear phishing is more targeted. So we're actually going to run through kind of a short demo here of what I would do as an attacker around this. So if I were to try to contact you as Steve Hardee, you're going to say that that's a bad guy. I don't want to receive anything from him, right? So I need to create a new persona. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to thispersondoesnotexist.com, and you can check it out. It's not malicious, but it randomly generates a computer image of a person. Right, so all of these images that you're seeing on the screen right now, these are not real people at all. These are all completely generated. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. That way, you know, you can't do reverse Google image search if you're super technical to find that I stole a profile, right? So now I need a new name. So fakenamegenerator.com is going to go ahead and put everything together for me. I don't have to think about it. Now we've got Brenda Morales. We've got our image, we've got our name. I'm gonna go ahead and create a basic LinkedIn profile. Now what I'm gonna do is, in this scenario, we're going after CEO Bob. Bob's super important. Well, I've got this brand new profile, and if I just were to send a LinkedIn connection or message, it's gonna say, you don't know this person, they've got 0 connections, right? That's not a good way for me to move forward. So what I would typically do is, I know Alice works with Bob. So I'm gonna go start building relationships with Alice and get all these lower target people if I were to try to target CEO Bob. I'm gonna create those relationships or create those connections. So when I go back to Bob, it says, hey, you've got these 8 connections in together, right? You both know them. So that's kind of one of the methods that we would do. So here from LinkedIn, I'm going to use just cybersecurity as an example. But again, think about your business. If I were to search your business, what am I going to find? So cybersecurity alone, because that's what I'm in, I find over 250,000 results. So we're going to go ahead and randomly pick on somebody, and we get some information, right? They're telling us about what they do and everything here. So why is this important to me? Well, you may or may not know, but if we kind of take a bigger look at this, what I see is this person's a cybersecurity analyst. They've been with the company for close to 5 years now. They use ServiceNow ticketing system, have 13,000 users, 30,000 devices. And more importantly for me is they start mentioning the actual products they're using. So McAfee Web Gateway, McAfee Orchestrator. They've got, Cisco solutions, things like that. So why that's important to me is McAfee, for instance, if I'm going to build malicious files that I want to make sure run in your systems, before I send it to you, I'm going to play in my lab and get McAfee and make sure that it bypasses McAfee. I don't care that Symantec picks it up or Windows Defender picks it up. I know that you have McAfee and I know this is going to work. I don't want to burn that one time, that one chance that I have to get in, right? So what can you do about this? Well, first, do you need the social media account, right? We all have, a lot of us have Facebook, Instagram, all of these different social media accounts. Do you need them in general? And what needs to be posted, right? It's bad practice, when you're going on vacation on Facebook to say, hey, going to the Caribbean for 3 weeks starting tomorrow. Well, now I know that you're not home for a while. Same thing about all of this that you're posting on your social media from the attacker's perspective. Hey, we just purchased this new product, so excited about it. It's interesting to have that, but from the attacker perspective, that's what we're looking for. The third bullet there, do you really need to use your real name? And I'm going to put the little star for terms of service agreement. It may be against a term of service agreement. I can't, recommend that you do this, but if I'm a top CEO, I may kind of want to use a pseudonym. That way I'm not targeted from that aspect and being able to do that. And I can still contact my family and view kids' photos and things like that. So that's just something to think about. Going down, do you actually know this connection, right? So I talked about in our example of me going after Alice and Tim and things like that to get to CEO Bob. If Bob posted that, hey, I was at conference 123 in Vegas, well, I'm going to be able to see that. And if I, as my pseudo account, was trying to get to CEO Bob, well, he's going to meet a lot of people. And now I'm going to say, hey, it was great meeting you at conference 123 out in Vegas. Let's connect and really talk. Okay, we make that connection. I now know from his other employees that there's McAfee. They use McAfee. I'm going to wait a little and then send to CEO Bob. Hey, when we talked, you really wanted some more information about our company. Here's a PDF that kind of goes over what we offer. So just think about that. We talked about how those PDFs can come in, what I can get. I now know that you use McAfee, and I've already bypassed McAfee. So just kind of think about those. And I know some of this may seem a little extreme to some of you. This is absolutely how it happens. This is absolutely how attackers would get in, how I would get in. So we're going to run through a few different password attacks now. So one of which is what's called brute force. So what brute forcing is I'm going to take the username of Steve and try the password 1. Well, that one's not going to work. So I'm going to try password 2, 3, 4, right? So that's what brute forcing is. Now, typically I would have an entire list of passwords that I'm going to try. So you may get upset with your IT department when you type your password in wrong a few times and it says, hey, your account's been locked out. That's what this is trying to prevent here. So don't be mad at your IT department. That's why they're doing this. Brute force attacks work in certain scenarios. If you're a larger organization, you should have those disabled or picked off after 3 to 5 attempts, right? But I just kind of wanted to talk through what these are. So next, we're going to talk about password spraying, and this is actually more successful for us. So previously, we did one user and multiple passwords. Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite. I'm going to choose one password and do multiple users. So I'm going to use the password summer 2020 bang because that meets all my complexity requirements, right? Upper, lower, numbers, and a special character. But now I'm going to try it against multiple users. So summer 2020, and we're going to say Steve. I'm going to say Alex, Kathy, Peter, right? So now I'm never hitting that lockout threshold. So your accounts aren't going to be tipped off. Your security team's not going to be tipped off unless they're a heavily financed security department. They may not be able to pick these off. So that's what password spraying is. It's very, very effective. Credential dumps and stuffing. So what a credential dump is just a large file generally or a paste of usernames and passwords. So I've blurred these out here, but this is a credential dump of Gmail usernames and passwords. So these are both grayed out, but this is what it would look like. Username at gmail.com, password 1. So this is bad in all kinds of realms, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use it for password stuffing. Well, these are widely available in different forums online. If you know where to look for them, it's quite terrifying, unfortunately. So Yahoo, 600,000 accounts, 500,000 Apple, right? These are for sale, for trade, what have you. And there's actually reputation on the forums, right? So hey, Steve always gives me great passwords. 90% of them work. Didn't charge me a lot. He actually didn't send me malware. So really interesting that these are out there as well for you to be aware of. So now we're going to talk about cred over, and there's many tools like this. This is just one tool that we've leveraged before. What this does is I'm going to take that steve@gmail.com and summer 2020 password. It's part of a password dump, or I found it somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into this program, and it's going to actually run through all different websites, right? So this is where credential reuse or password reuse is bad, and we know it's bad, and we're successful in using it. So it's going to take that password that we had for Gmail and try it on Facebook, login successful. Try it on Twitter, login successful. And it's just going to run through all of these. There's many applications like this. This is just one that I wanted to show you as an example. So what can we do? Well, you need to educate yourself and your employees, about credential reuse. Hey, don't use that same password. Make it a good password. We saw how these can run through different scenarios. Reduce your information online. We talked about what you put up is valuable. Also keep in mind, there are tools for me gathering information. If I really wanted to target you, I'm going to go to those websites that you have, Facebook, Instagram, and look for keywords and actually build my password list around that. So if your dog's name is Fluffy, right, I'm going to try passwords around Fluffy because it's likely that that's your password. Slow down and question. So again, if you receive an urgent email, if you receive an urgent phone call, really take the time to take a step back. What is happening? What's going on? Don't let people fluster you. It is a highly successful method. Use known sites and numbers. So again, if Bank of America calls you or emails you, you hang up, you go to the site directly. Don't click on those links. Keep your devices and software up to date. We talked about Windows and Mac, the actual applications that are running on them as well. Using antivirus, anti-malware, use them, and having backups that are off-site and actually having backups. So we talked about having a strong, unique password, right? We saw the different password attacks. We saw credential reuse, how that's very, very successful. So my typical advice from the personal aspect or the business aspect is, it's hard to say, hey, have these 30 different passwords, make them super strong, and also remember them all. Good luck, right? having a passphrase is much better than a random character password. So if you have an 8-character password that's a bunch of up, down, characters and random keystrokes, you're not going to remember that. But because it's only 8 characters in length, it's not going to take me long at all to get that. What you want is a strong passphrase. So think of a sentence. My daughter went to school, 2020, dog, exclamation. So something ridiculous that only you would know, but having the longer length of a password is much better for you. So my typical advice here is we want to have a really, really strong password for our primary email. So let's think of Gmail, right? If I were to compromise your Gmail account and I wanted to access your Facebook or your Bank of America, what do? I go to Facebook or Bank of America and say, forgot my password. Well, where's that going? That's going to the email that I now have control over. So you want to have a really, really strong password for your email. And then second recommendation is having a password manager, right? So I said, hey, have really strong passwords for all of your sites, but good luck remembering them. Well, password manager will help you with that. So if I have to remember my email password, my Gmail, for instance, and then I need to remember a password to get into my password manager, that's 2 passwords that I need to remember. And the password manager is going to remember all the others. So what this does is when I go to a website, the password manager is going to say, hey, I recognize this website. Would you like me to log in for you? Yep, I don't need to know that password. It also works on iOS and Android. So if I'm accessing that from my phone, it'll do the same thing. And I can actually have that tied to my fingerprint or Face ID or whatever you're using. So some of the password manager options are LastPass, 1Password, Dashlane. There's a bunch out there. They all have different variations. You need to find what works for you. Find what you find easy to use so that you will actually use it. Then we need to talk about 2-factor authentication. So when I go to log into my Chase account or anything like that, I want it to say, hey, that's great, you know the password, give us a second form of authentication. Let us text you. Let us use a Google Authenticator code, right? Something else. So if bad guy has my password, it's gonna send a text to me. First, I know that something's happening, but 2, he doesn't have that second form of factor, right? 90% of your websites that you use, unless it's legacy or something like that, is now most likely going to have some form of 2-factor authentication. So you really need to look into those. It is not an all stop for somebody who truly wants to get into your accounts, but it's sure going to make it difficult. So having a disaster recovery plan, we talked about, if something were to happen, if your devices were to get ransomware, what are you doing? Who are you calling? Something that we really, really love to run through are what's called tabletop exercises. So let's get the business owners together. Let's get some of our executives together, depending on how big we are, and our IT teams, right? And say, hey, today we're discussing ransomware. If Tim's computer over there got ransomware, how do we handle this? And actually talk through it. If you can't perform the action that you're actually able to do, hey, maybe we need to discuss about buying something. Do we need this tool over here to be able to do this? And come up with some crazy tabletops. Hey, building A caught on fire and burned everything inside of it. Is that where all of our backups are? Is that where all of our financial institution data is? Come up with all of these exercises. And from our side in a large enterprise, this is extremely helpful for us to get financing. And also bring items to executives, right? So we talk about these, and there's a lot of assumptions. Hey, we bought security tool A for you. Why can't you do this? Well, because we need B, C, and D, right? So just examples, and always apply this to yourself, your business, your home, your small business. Another item that I advise you to do as a personal or in a business, if you kind of run that, is check out haveibeenpwned.com. So this is run by a security researcher named Troy Hunt. He's a really great guy. What this does is if you go to haveibeenpwned.com, you type in your email address, and it is going to return and say, if you have been part of any known breach, it will not return your password. It won't return anything like that was part of the breach, but it'll say, hey, this email address was part of the 2012 LinkedIn breach and this breach over here, right? Well, if you know you've been running bad passwords for a while and you've reused the same password that you know was on LinkedIn, and that's out there now, think about what people are doing with that password. Go ahead and rotate through there. Go ahead and hack yourself as well, or just Google yourself, right? Maybe don't throw some malicious code out there and learn that today, but just Google yourself. What can you find on yourself? If you can find something, I'm gonna find it. I'm likely gonna find more, but at least start there and go through some of these sites. Spokio, all of those sites have a lot of information about you that you may not be aware of. And if you never Googled yourself, it's quite a fun experiment. So we covered a lot of topics today. We're already at 40 something minutes in. I wanted to leave time for questions. I've also thrown up a few topics that we didn't cover. If you're the type of person that wants to research more and learn more about some items, I just threw a few items up here for you. So device encryption, look into that. Virtual private networks. If you're interested in protecting your home network or your personal business network, something like pfSense is a home firewall. If you want to control and block advertisements on your network, you can look into a Pi-hole. Other topics that we didn't talk about are like SIM swapping. So that's a really big target now, where people are taking your phone number and taking that entire phone over, going into T-Mobile and convincing somebody to, hey, I've lost my phone, please swap it over to this, and now somebody else owns your phone and is in control of it. Look into putting credit freezes up on yourself. If you're not looking to buy a house, a car, or any major purchase right now, please look into applying a credit freeze for yourself. And also look into photo metadata. So when you take a photo on your phone, it actually has the GPS coordinates. It has a lot of information in there. And if you were to send that to me, I could extract that. If you could send that to somebody else, they may be able to extract that. So those are just some other topics that you may want to research yourself if you're into that. But other than that, I will go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments.
Okay, and I'm going to allow folks to show themselves. So you've thoroughly freaked me out. Thank you very much. So Steve, going back to the PDF with the link in it, is that, if I've selected that link, do I at that point, can my IT department find the malware that was associated with it?
That's a great question. So depending on the solutions that you have, right, I can't speak to your organization specifically. If you're a smaller business, maybe not. But if you have logging of what your users do or where they go, they should be able to track that down. So that PDF method that attackers are using is just to generally get by that kind of first initial security from your email solutions. So those email solutions often look for, does this have an attachment? Does the attachment look weird? Does this email have a link in it? And does the link look weird? So sometimes those would be stripped out from the email itself. If I were to just send you an email with a link in it, it may be stripped out. But if it's in a PDF attachment that's not malicious, that's what I'm trying to do, is just get by that way. But to more directly answer your question, depending on the size of your security department, they should be able to find that and track that down.
Okay, so one of the questions that just came in was, how do you disable the photo metadata?
Oh, great question as well, thanks. So within your phone, there's going to be a setting. If you're on an iPhone, you would go into settings, photos, and there's some setting that says like enable location on my photos. If you Google how to disable location on photos on iPhone or Android, you should find plenty of articles around it. If not, feel free to contact me, and I can try to help you out with that if you have questions. A lot of the sites like Twitter and Facebook have started removing that as you post those. So when you post them to the larger social media, they're not there. What actually happened was, what forced that was some of the military was posting photos of their sites, and it actually gave away their location because that GPS coordinate information was being posted as well. to Twitter and things like that, and they actually got attacked. So after that, the larger sites kind of started stripping that information.
Okay. So we also have another that says, how do I get around a VPN? Well, how do we get VPN to go around Spectrum network?
So a VPN will only route your traffic to another provider, right? So you kind of have to trust that provider. It's really not a way to like go dark and hide yourself, right? Typically VPNs are leveraged for if I'm going to Starbucks or a Wi-Fi hotspot. I don't want somebody like me sitting in that same Starbucks being able to intercept that traffic. You absolutely can, and I do myself, use it at home for less tracking, right? So if, for instance, Bright House, Spectrum, AT&T, everybody's gathering information on all of us. Now, if you have a VPN, is that person now gathering information? So I think to answer your question, how do you get a VPN? Well, you just go sign up for a VPN, download the client, and install it. Some of the VPNs more commonly are private internet access, also known as PIA. There is OpenVPN. There are a few that I not coming to the top of my head right now. But there's a few really good VPNs. But again, you're just giving your traffic to somebody else in that aspect. But I still would advise getting one if you're paranoid like me and want to have fun.
So there's not a way to, if a VPN, you can't get around a network because you've got to use a network, right?
So you will be able to have a different route of traffic. So if I'm trying to get around something, if there happened to be a block, right? If they're blocking a website from me, for instance, I can use a VPN and route my traffic, and then now I can get to that website. I'm not advising that you do this at your company. Please do not take that. That would provide that ability. What I'm saying is that now I'm just providing my traffic to somebody else. So I guess my question would be, what ultimately are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to hide from Spectrum, I mean, there's still ways for them to figure out data. They'll see your connection going in. I think ultimately we need to have a discussion of what your goal is, so I don't misrepresent and tell you something incorrectly.
Well, I think she pretty much helped with this one. It was the folks who want to hide when they go to an unsavory site. Are they using a VPN at home?
Sure. I mean, who are you hiding from, I guess would be the question. Again, somebody has the potential to see that data. If you're doing some really sketchy stuff, VPN is not going to help you, right? From like authorities and things like that. If you're trying to reduce tracking for advertisements and or your boss or something like that, theoretically, yeah, that could help you. But I don't want to go too far into this because it's an interesting conversation.
Okay. So we also have somebody that they're getting a lot of texts on their phone from different phone numbers, and they just keep reporting them as spam, but how do they stop them? Is that possible? It apparently happens several times a day, different messages.
Well, unfortunately, once your number's out there, you're going to get a lot of spam. One thing that I would advise that I personally do is when you go to whatever store, pick a random store, and they say, hey, would you like to be part of our program? Please give us your number. My response is no. And it confuses most of the registered people. They're like, well, I need to put in a number. Okay, put in zeros. All of that information is gathered, right? Why? Well, because they can sell that information. No store wants to help you, in my opinion. No store wants to help you save money at their store. They want to make money. So why are they collecting that information? Why are they collecting that phone number? the old song 867-5309. Give them your area code and 867-5309. I guarantee you there's already a phone number registered for that. All they need is a phone number. I can't say do bad and not give them one, but a lot of the times in my experience, that is a company that had that information, that phone number leaks as a good phone number. If you ever respond to those text messages, they now know it is a good phone number. If you reply, stop, they know that's an active phone number, so they're going to keep trying. As far as stopping them altogether from coming in, you can contact your provider, but it's so rampant now that the provider may not even help you with that, unfortunately.
Okay. So do you know any status about the government monitoring our internet access?
Yes, they absolutely are. Who's not monitoring what we do now?
Okay, now you're just really messing with me. So how can you just retire a hacked email address? Just kind of strip it down to stop receiving anything. Can you retire a hacked email?
So, as in, I'm getting a bunch of spam to it, or somebody has taken over my email and I no longer have control over it?
Her ID stuff showed up on the dark web and hacked several years ago. Just want to know that that email was closed. She wants to close the email.
If you still have control over the email address, then you can request that email be closed from Gmail or what have you. I mean, all that information's never gone. If you're no longer using the email and or you're no longer in control of it, not much you can do there. But if once your email address is out there, if you're receiving a bunch of spam, you're going to continue. I guess I'm not fully understanding that. I apologize.
Yeah, I think that she just wants to, okay, she's still in control. Email.
So if you're in control of it and you want to, if you want to shut the email down, you can request through Yahoo or Gmail or whoever, please close this account. If your information was on the dark web and you're receiving a bunch of spam, they're going to continue to send that spam to you. I would just mark those as spam. If you're concerned that the password was also compromised, that's what we were discussing earlier of, having good passwords, having long passwords. I hope that answered your question. I apologize.
Yeah, well, and I like the part where you talked about the passwords, because I know that I tend to I read a lot, so I will oftentimes use my book title or something like that to do it, and it seems something I can remember.
So what book are you reading now?
I'm not telling you. I listened very closely. I don't trust you now. So, and yes, you did answer the question regarding the email. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
Does anybody else have a question? If be sure you can come off mute if you'd like. I really like the how you and your team do the scenarios, because I don't know, especially now with everything happening, I don't know that people were anticipating the pandemic and had any kind of plan in place. And I think that's the same anytime you do risk assessment. Can we plan for every scenario? I don't know how you guys do that.
No, absolutely. And that's a great topic as well, as many people are now working from home. So if you, as a small business, you bought all these security solutions at the office and everybody's at the office with their computers, but now they're at home. So are your users using those laptops? Are they still protected in the same way? That's a great tabletop to walk through. That's kind of an immediate tabletop because it's happening now. But think about that. We bought all these security solutions that are now at the office. Well, are our users using VPN? If they're not, they're not really going through our network as a company, right? So they may or may not be receiving all of those security controls that we've put in place. Another item that we've seen before, especially out in the wild, is people connecting their devices directly to the internet, right? If I don't have a good router or a router at all at home, my device being plugged directly into the modem will expose my laptop directly to the internet. And we've seen, remote desktop. If you have remote desktop open because you work from home and you want to be able to get into your office from home, right? Remote desktop is a way that people can do that. Well, if you just leave that open to the internet, everybody else in the hacker community is also trying to get in there. So that's where the brute forcing of passwords we talked about earlier, I guarantee you that's nonstop until they're getting into that. So if you have remote desktop opened at your office, I would bet money that somebody's already in or really close to getting into it.
Ooh, that's scary. We did have another question. What's the best free version of anti-malware for a PC?
There's a lot that could be answered with that. Depending on the operating system you're running, if you're running Windows 10, Microsoft Windows Defender has been one of the top rated free versions lately. They always go up and down between Symantec, McAfee, AVG. All of them have pros and cons. So the way antivirus works is I have to know about something to create a signature about it. Right? So you have a fingerprint, I have a fingerprint, files have fingerprints, right? So that's known as a hash. So if I know about a file that's bad and I know about the hash, I can put that into my antivirus and say, hey, if you see this hash or that fingerprint, that's bad, block it. There are other things that antivirus people do based on heuristics, right? So if the file does this and this, it's likely this. But for the most part, they work off of signatures. So a lot of it's hard to answer that question. If I had to absolutely gun to my head pick one, I would say if you have Windows, use Windows Defender. It's really done well lately. But they're all different, all depending on what the topic of the day is, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay, did that answer your question? Hopefully. Yes.
The best antivirus is one that's running and up to date.
Right. And now you mentioned Windows 10. I know that has it already gone away, or is 7 still hanging on for dear life? I know that that's one of those that we've suggested that, you can only use Windows 7 for a while.
Yep. So Windows 7 is officially end of life. So Microsoft is no longer supporting that or releasing Windows updates unless you have paid the extended business license agreement for it. So if you're running that at home, you likely aren't paying the thousands to have that. Windows XP, Windows 7, those are extremely vulnerable if you still have them. Even the first versions of Windows 10, there are different releases of Windows 10. You'll hear like Windows 10 1809 or 1704, things like that. The first versions of Windows 10 are actually no longer supported for updates unless you have those extended contracts. So great question. Running the latest operating system is a must. Be that Windows or Mac or Linux. Even iOS and Android, keep those up to date. There are reasons that there are updates. These bad guys, good guys find these vulnerabilities, and the manufacturers release them, release patches for them. And again, we covered that plus the applications themselves. So Adobe, Google Chrome, things like that all have updates. Please update your software.
And so you lead me to my last question here is, I do know that there are a lot of people that leave their computers on nonstop. So your recommendation to reboot or at least shut it off at the end of the day so that it gets its updates?
Yeah, you know, if you're a small business or personal at home, I'm not. It all kind of varies at your scenario. At minimum, you should schedule the updates, right? So you can say, hey, apply my updates at 2 a.m. on Wednesdays. You can do that for a business. You can do that for what have you. It's difficult for me to answer what is best for you, but either way, you should absolutely apply them. As far as leaving it on all the time, that's going to come back to your network, right? So how protected is your network? My computer's on 24/7, but I also have a network that's monitoring for weird activity and blocking anything trying to come in. So again, it's hard to answer the generic person, but the advice is, you know, just update it. You know, reboot it if it's not rebooting by itself once a week, once a month. Patches are released once a month.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Steve. Now, if anybody has additional questions, is there a way that they can reach you or reach out to you?
You can absolutely try to get a hold of me through my website, through Twitter. I've got them right here. So it's just my name, stevehardee.com. Here we go, stevehardee.com, or Twitter at Steve Hardee. If you, for some reason, would like to talk to me. Yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for participating with us today. This will be taped, and so it will be on our website for you to review. So everybody have a great day. Thank you again, Steve Hardee, and we will talk to you again.
Thank you so much.